After I lost my baby, my mother-in-law told everyone I faked the pregnancy for sympathy and even posted online that I was just craving attention. So I shared the ultrasound and leaked the letter her church group was never supposed to see. I was standing in the frozen food aisle at the Safeway in Tacoma when my phone started buzzing nonstop. At first, I thought it was my husband, maybe checking in on me, because he knew grocery stores still made me anxious after the miscarriage. But when I pulled out my phone, I saw 15 missed calls from my cousin, 2 from my sister, and a flood of texts all saying the same thing. Go online, now. I didn't want to. My hands were already shaking, and the last thing I needed was more reminders of what I'd lost. But the messages kept coming, and finally I opened Facebook. That's when I saw it. My mother-in-law, Lynn, had made a long public post, not private, not restricted, not even slightly careful, saying I had faked my pregnancy to manipulate her son and keep attention on myself. She said I was mentally unstable, that I enjoyed playing victim, and that my miscarriage was a story I made up when the truth risked coming out. She ended it with, "Please pray for my son, who has been trapped in this toxic situation for too long." I swear something in my chest physically cracked. I just stood there, staring at her words, my breath gone. A man with a cart accidentally bumped into me, apologized, and I barely even blinked. All I could hear was a faint buzzing in my ears and the faint hum of the freezer behind me. I had only lost the baby 6 weeks earlier. My body still hurt. My heart still hurt. I still woke up in the middle of the night reaching for a stomach that wasn't round anymore. And now the woman who'd hugged me in the ER and said, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," had turned around and told the entire damn internet that I had made everything up. My husband, Mark, called me right then. His voice was frantic. "Don't look at Facebook," he said. "It's too late," I whispered. He swore under his breath, something he rarely does, and said he was already heading to his mother's house to confront her. That scared me more than the post did. Mark doesn't yell. Mark avoids conflict like it's a sport. If he was going to his mom's place, it meant this was worse than I even knew. While I stood there frozen, more notifications rolled in. People were already commenting under Lynn's post, some offering prayers, some saying they always suspected something was off about me. One woman from her church wrote, "God sees the truth. Lies always come to light." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone. But all I could do was put the ice cream back, abandon my cart, and walk to my car on legs that didn't feel like mine. By the time I sat down behind the wheel, my cousin had sent screenshots from a private Facebook group, a group Lynn's church ladies ran. They'd been talking about me for weeks, calling me dramatic, saying I was trying to trap a man through false pregnancy hormones, mocking the way I cried at church when people prayed for us. But one screenshot, one that was never supposed to leave that group, made my stomach flip so hard I nearly threw up. It was a letter Lynn had written herself, and what she said in it, it wasn't just cruel. It hinted at something darker, something planned, something I didn't understand yet. And that letter is the reason I finally snapped, and why the revenge that followed tore everything in our family wide open. Before everything blew up, before the miscarriage, before the letter that changed everything, I honestly thought Lynn and I were okay. Not close, not warm, not mother-daughter bonded, but civil. Predictable. Manageable. She'd always been one of those women who smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes, the kind who compliments you in a tone that feels like a warning. But she'd never crossed any real lines. Not until I got pregnant. Mark and I had been trying for almost a year. When I finally saw the positive test, I cried so hard he thought something was wrong. We spent the whole night planning names and picturing our life in our little rental house on the east side of Tacoma. The one with the tiny backyard that barely fits a grill. It didn't matter, we were going to make it work. We were so damn happy. Telling Lynn was awkward, but I chalked that up to surprise. She just stared at me for a few too many seconds, then hugged Mark first, not me. She told him he'd better be ready for responsibility. Like I wasn't standing right there, like this wasn't my body doing all the actual work. I remember, stupidly, trying to make jokes to break the tension. I remember her not laughing. Over the next few weeks, she became obsessed with knowing everything. What prenatal vitamins I was taking, which doctor I picked, whether we could send her photos of every appointment. She kept hinting that we should move in with her to save money, even though we hadn't asked and didn't need to. When I politely said no, she got icy. Like I'd taken something away from her, but I tried to ignore it. Because pregnancy is a weird, emotional time, and I kept telling myself I was probably reading into things. Then came the ultrasound. It was only 8 weeks, just a little blurry shape, but it was hours. I remember Mark squeezing my hand like he was grounding himself, like he was scared he might float away from happiness. I texted a photo to family, and Lynn immediately called Mark privately. Not me, him. She told him the image looked off. She said she'd seen real ultrasounds before, and mine didn't look like a real pregnancy. She asked whether he was sure I was actually pregnant and not confused. Mark hung up on her. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But she kept pushing. Subtle comments, backhanded questions. Once she asked if I'd ever been treated for emotional issues, as if that had anything to do with anything. Another time she asked if I was prepared for the attention pregnancy brings, said it with this strange emphasis, like she meant something else. I told myself I just needed to get through the first trimester. And then I didn't. The day I miscarried was one of the worst days of my life. The ER room was cold, and the nurse kept apologizing, and the doctor talked like I wasn't even a person. Mark held my hand the entire time. He cried harder than I did. When his mother finally arrived, she hugged us, cried right along with us, whispered how sorry she was. I believed her. God, I wish I hadn't. Because 2 days later, while I was still in bed, still bleeding, still waking up crying, she posted on Facebook about how some women manipulate grief for attention. Not using my name, not yet, but everyone knew. And then, behind the scenes, she started telling people I had faked the pregnancy entirely. I didn't know any of that until after the Safeway day, until after the post, until after that letter leaked. And learning the truth, slowly, piece by piece, was the moment everything shifted inside me. Something cold, something sharp, something that wasn't going to let this go. After the Safeway incident, after seeing Lynn's post blow up with comments and whispers and straight-up lies, I spent the rest of that day in this weird, numb space. Not angry, not crying, just quiet. Like my body shut down to protect me from how bad it actually was. But the escalation didn't stop. If anything, that day was just the starting gun. When I got home, Mark was already there, pacing our living room in this tight, frantic rhythm. He looked shaken. I'd seen him upset before, but not like this. He told me he went to his mom's house, but she wouldn't open the door. She just talked to him through it, like she was scared of him or something, accusing him of being manipulated by me. She said, "You've been lying to me since we met," he said. She said she has proof. Proof of what? Proof I didn't even know existed. Proof she invented. My heart sank because for the first time I realized she wasn't just being mean or dramatic. She was building something. She had a narrative, a whole storyline about me, and she'd been putting pieces together behind our backs for months. That night, the comments under her post doubled. Someone from her church messaged me, telling me they were concerned for my mental state. Another woman I barely knew sent me some long paragraph about forgiveness and repentance, like I'd committed a sin by losing a baby. And then my aunt, my sweet, hesitant, always trying to stay out of drama aunt, texted me a screenshot from a prayer chain group. It wasn't the same group as the one with the letter. This one was even more private. They were saying I'd lied for attention, that I needed counseling, that Mark needed to reconsider the marriage before it's too late. It was the last line that made my skin crawl. We can't let her trap him through false motherhood. Trap him, false motherhood. Who talks like that about someone who just lost a child? The next day, I went to pick up a prescription and the pharmacist, someone I'd known casually for 2 years, asked if I was doing okay with everything going around online. She said it softly, sympathetically, but it still felt like a slap. That meant people in town knew. People in Tacoma. People who didn't even know me had opinions now. And then the worst escalation happened at my job. I worked the reception desk at a small dental clinic. Nothing fancy, but my coworkers were kind, and the job was steady. When I walked in that morning, my boss pulled me aside. She said someone had emailed the office saying I'd been faking a pregnancy for Sympathy, and that I'd created a toxic environment by lying. They didn't sign their name. But the writing style, the wording, it was Lynn. Mark confirmed it when I showed him. She used the phrase attention-seeking behavior, that's straight from her. That's when he did something I wasn't expecting. He blocked her number. He blocked his own mother, first time in his life. And he said, "I need to protect you, I should have done it sooner." But even then, even with him shutting her out, it didn't stop. More posts, more whispers, more messages, people screenshotting things and sending them to me. My cousin kept pulling things from the church group, screenshots that made my stomach turn. They were planning some kind of intervention for Mark. They were treating him like a hostage, like I was the villain. But it was the letter, the one my cousin finally sent me late one night, that escalated things from cruel to horrifying. Because in that letter, Lynn didn't just accuse me of lying. She revealed something else. Something she'd done while I was pregnant. And it made everything click in the worst possible way. The letter wasn't supposed to ever leave that church group. It was posted in their Women of Grace accountability circle, which sounded harmless until I started reading. At first, it was the same nonsense she'd been saying everywhere else, that I was unstable, manipulative, dramatic, that I'd latched onto her son and created a pregnancy story to distract from deeper problems. But halfway down the page, the tone shifted. It got specific, calculated, cold. My cousin had highlighted the part that made her hand shake when she screenshotted it. "I've done everything I can to guide Mark through this situation, including taking steps during her early pregnancy to confirm whether anything was actually happening." I read that line maybe 10 times. Taking steps during her early pregnancy. What steps? The next paragraph answered that. When I visited their house while she was 8 weeks along, I checked the bathroom trash as I always do in situations like this and found no real medical waste. She wrote that like it was normal. Like rummaging through our trash was some holy calling. But the part that made my stomach flip was the next sentence. I also called her doctor's office pretending to be her and asked them to confirm the appointment details. They seemed confused when I mentioned ultrasound results. My breath stopped. Actually stopped. She had impersonated me. She had called my doctor. She had tried to get access to my medical information. And I remembered that day. I remembered getting a weird voicemail from the clinic saying, "We received your call, but can't release information without proper authorization." I'd been so nauseous that week, I completely forgot to ask about it. Mark was reading over my shoulder when I hit that part. I felt his body stiffen behind me. He whispered, "She called your doctor." Like he couldn't believe the words. I kept reading. "I worry Mark is too blind to see the truth. I fear he doesn't realize that sometimes, in situations like this, miscarriages are invented to cover the collapse of a lie. I will continue intervening however God leads." Intervening. Intervening how? My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone, but I scrolled anyway. And then came the twist that made everything else look harmless in comparison. I confronted the clinic again last week after the supposed miscarriage. I needed to verify whether any medical event actually took place. The young man at the desk slipped up and confirmed a real loss occurred. I consider this an answered prayer, because at least now we know she must have lost a different man's baby. I went cold all over. All the blood drained from my face. This wasn't her being confused. This wasn't her being controlling. This wasn't her being dramatic or overbearing. This was targeted character assassination. She had decided in her mind that I was cheating on Mark, that the baby wasn't his, that the miscarriage was somehow proof. She wasn't confused about the pregnancy. She was rewriting it, and she wasn't just posting lies online. She was calling my doctor, interrogating staff, trying to dig up or create evidence. My entire body felt like it was buzzing, like my nerves were short-circuiting. Mark sat down beside me, face pale, eyes dark. He said one thing, quietly. "She's been trying to destroy our marriage." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because right then I realized something horrifying. This wasn't the end of what she'd done. The letter wasn't even the worst part. It was only the first glimpse, the first twist, and what came next would rip the floor out from under both of us. After reading that letter, something in me finally snapped, but not in the screaming, crying way Lynn probably hoped for. It was quieter, colder, like a steel plate slid into place inside my chest. I wasn't going to argue with her anymore. I wasn't going to defend myself. I wasn't going to beg people to believe me. I was done playing defense in a fight I never picked. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of what she'd done. Because if she'd been calling my doctor, digging through our trash, monitoring my appointments, and posting lies online, then what else had she done? What else had she planted? Who else had she poisoned against me? So I started digging. The first step was getting all the screenshots organized. My cousin, my sister, my aunt, even 2 people from Lynn's own church, started quietly sending me things. Whisper messages, "I thought you should see this." I didn't agree with what she said. This went too far. Within 2 days, I had a folder of over 60 screenshots, her posts, her comments, her messages, the prayer group gossip, the letter. But the part that gutted me the most was realizing how long she'd been at this. How many women in that circle believed her? How many thought I was the unstable one? Mark was going through his own version of shock. I'd never seen him angry like that, not hot anger, but this slow-burning fury he had to keep swallowing just to function. He kept pacing, stopping to reread the letter, then pacing again. At one point he whispered, almost to himself, "She tried to break us up. She actually tried." But underneath all his anger there was this crushed look, because it was his mother, the woman who raised him, the woman he always made excuses for, watching him go through that hurt in its own way. But revenge wasn't going to be emotional. That's how she operated, through feelings, paranoia, gossip, manipulation. Mine had to be built on facts, proof, receipts, so I made a plan. One, gather everything, every screenshot, every message, every call log from my doctor's office. I even called the clinic and asked for documentation regarding unauthorized attempts to access my medical records. They couldn't give me everything, but they confirmed the dates someone impersonated me. They logged it. My stomach twisted hearing it spoken out loud. 2, make a timeline. This part was harder than I expected. When you're being subtly attacked for months, you lose track of when things happened. But once I laid it out, every rumor, every post, every little concerned message someone forwarded, the pattern was sickeningly clear. She didn't spiral because of my pregnancy. She started before I even got pregnant. 3, decide what to release and when. Because Lynn loved public spaces. She loved attention. She loved being the hero, the martyr, the woman who saw the truth when no one else would. So I decided the truth would be public too, but not out of rage, out of necessity, because people believed her, a lot of people. And I knew, painfully knew, that silence would only confirm her lies. 4, talk to Mark about the nuclear option. I told him my plan in our kitchen, late at night, while he sat staring at the grain of the table like it could somehow explain the last 6 months of his life. He didn't interrupt, he didn't argue. When I finished, he just nodded. Then he said, "I'm with you, whatever you need to do." His voice cracked on that last word. 5, prepare for fallout. Because whatever happened next was going to explode. There was no universe where exposing his mother's lies publicly would go quietly. But there was one more thing I didn't account for. One more piece I hadn't uncovered yet. A piece that would make everything more complicated, more painful, and far, far worse. Something no screenshot had revealed. Not until it dropped into my inbox from an anonymous account, a single message that started with, "You don't know the real reason she did this, but I do." The message came at 2:17 am. I was awake because sleep had basically stopped happening. Every time I closed my eyes, the letter flashed behind my eyelids. Or the Facebook post, or the ultrasound, or the cold way Lynn wrote "a different man's baby," like she wasn't talking about a real child, a real loss. So when my phone buzzed, I grabbed it immediately. The sender was a blank profile. No photo, no name, just a gray silhouette. The subject line read, "You're not seeing the whole picture." My stomach clenched, but I opened it. The email was short. No intro, no excuses. "I'm writing this anonymously because I'm scared of what she'll do if she finds out. Your mother-in-law didn't start hating you when you got pregnant. She hated you before you even married her son because she found out something about Mark that you don't know." I froze. "Mark," I kept reading. "She has been terrified that you would discover it. She believes you getting pregnant forced the truth closer to coming out. That's why she did all this. That's why she tried to break you two up. She's been trying to stop you from finding out for a long time." My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself breathe. What truth? What was this? Some scare tactic? Another manipulation? But the message wasn't finished. There was a link, a Dropbox folder. "Here is what she's been hiding. I can't say more without her knowing it came from me." Then the signature, "Someone who used to trust her." I stared at the link for a long time. My hand was shaking so badly I had to set the phone down. I didn't want to click it. I didn't want another twist. Not one involving Mark, not when everything else was already collapsing. but I clicked. Inside the folder were 3 files. One PDF, 2 videos. I opened the PDF first. It was a scanned copy of a counseling intake form dated 2013, 2 years before I met Mark. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. His name was on it, his birthday, his old address, reason for visit, stress due to family control dynamics, panic episodes, emotional pressure from mother. That alone was a punch to the gut. But the next line hit harder. Patient mentioned mother threatening to reveal false history about partner to keep him unmarried. Patient unsure what she means. False history about partner from 2013. I didn't know anything about Mark dating anyone seriously before me, not because he hid things, but because he didn't dwell on the past. He'd said once he'd had a relationship that ended messy, but he didn't explain. I never pushed. I opened the first video. It was grainy, filmed in what looked like a church hallway. Lynn was talking to a woman I didn't recognize, maybe the person who emailed me. The woman was whispering, "You can't keep doing this. He's an adult." And Lynn said, clear as day, "He doesn't make good choices. Look what happened last time. I saved him once, I'll save him again. I won't let another woman trap him the way she did." Another woman trap him. What the hell did that mean? I played the second video. It was shorter, shakier. Lynn again, talking angrily into her phone. "I don't care what he thinks he remembers. I told him the truth that mattered. I won't let another girl ruin his life the way that first one almost did. This one is worse. She actually got pregnant." That's when I stopped breathing, because the tone in her voice wasn't paranoia. It was protectiveness twisted into delusion. She thought she was saving him, and suddenly everything snapped into a new, horrifying shape. She wasn't trying to expose me. She was trying to replace a past she'd rewritten. This wasn't random cruelty. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was obsession. And Mark, the man I loved, the man grieving right beside me, had no idea the truth she was hiding from both of us. I didn't sleep at all after watching those videos. I just sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall while everything in my head rearranged itself into a darker picture than I ever imagined. By morning, I knew I had to tell Mark. He was in the kitchen making coffee, eyes exhausted, shoulders slumped like he hadn't slept either. When I told him there was something he needed to see, he didn't even question it. He just followed me to the couch. I showed him the PDF first. His face tightened, not in anger but in shame, like he didn't want me seeing pieces of his old trauma laid bare. I told him softly, "It's okay. You didn't do anything wrong." Then I played the first video. He froze, completely still, not blinking. When Lynn said she saved him once, his hand twitched like he was going to reach for something, then stopped. He stared through the screen like he was looking at a memory he'd buried deep. "Mark," I whispered, "what is she talking about? What happened?" He swallowed hard. I don't know," he said. But the way he said it didn't sound like confusion. It sounded like something inside him was locked shut. I played the second video. When Lynn said, "I told him the truth that mattered," he flinched. Actually flinched. And when she said, "I won't let another girl ruin his life the way the first one almost did," I saw something break wide open behind his eyes. He whispered, barely audible, "I thought I imagined that." "Imagined what?" He didn't answer. He just kept staring down at his hands like they belonged to someone else, so I pushed gently. "Mark, what did she tell you back then?" "About your ex." His voice was empty when he finally spoke. "She told me she cheated on me, that she got pregnant from another guy and tried to trick me into claiming the baby. She said she stopped the lie before I could get hurt." It felt like the air shifted in the room. I said, very carefully, "Did your ex ever tell you she cheated?" He blinked slowly. "No, I never talked to her again. My mom blocked her number on my phone. She told me she confessed everything and didn't want to face me." My stomach twisted. Hard. "Mark, is it possible none of that was true, that your mom made it up?" He didn't answer at first. He just sat there breathing hard, eyes unfocused, like a dam inside his mind had cracked. Then he whispered, "I always wondered. I used to wake up at night thinking something didn't make sense. But every time I tried to talk about it, my mom would shut me down. She said I was better off forgetting it." And then he said the part that chilled me. "I think she lied to me so I'd stay with her, so I'd never trust anyone else." That was when everything finally clicked, her obsession, her lies, her paranoia, the way she watched me like a threat from the second we met. This wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't even about me specifically. It was about control. Absolute, suffocating control over her son. Control so deep she'd burned his past, shredded his reality, and rebuilt a version of the world where only she could protect him. And my pregnancy was the one thing she couldn't stop. The one thing that would bond him to me permanently. The one thing that would prove he could build a family that wasn't hers. So she had to destroy it. She had to destroy me. When Mark finally looked up, he wasn't angry. He wasn't shocked. He looked hollow. She did this because she never wanted me to have a life without her, he whispered. She never wanted me to be a husband. Or a father. And when he said father, something inside me cracked open all over again. Because she hadn't just attacked me. She had attacked the idea of our baby ever existing. And that was the moment I knew. The revenge couldn't just expose her. It had to free him. Once Mark understood the truth, the full truth, something in him finally snapped the way mine had days earlier. Not loud, not explosive, but final, a door closing. We spent the next 2 days preparing everything. I organized the screenshots, timeline, videos, the scanned intake form, every piece of evidence showing her lies, her impersonation, her obsession, and her attempts to sabotage our marriage. I put it all into a single, clean, easy-to-follow document. Plain facts, dates, receipts, no emotion, no commentary, just the truth. Mark drafted his own statement. I didn't read it. That was his piece of healing, and I didn't want to shape it. But when he finished, he looked lighter. Not healed, but no longer carrying the weight alone. We agreed on the plan together, not to humiliate her, not to scream, not to stoop to the level of gossip she lived in, but to put everything out where she had put her lies, publicly, where everyone she weaponized could finally see the real story. On Sunday morning, the day her church posted their weekly community updates, Mark hit post on the statement he'd written. 5 paragraphs, clear and steady, explaining what his mother had done. How she impersonated me. How she harassed my doctor. How she fabricated stories about cheating, pregnancy, and miscarriage. How she manipulated his past and tried to isolate him. And then he ended it with the words, "My wife lost our child. She has never lied to me. My mother has. For years, this is the last time she will have any access to our lives." Underneath his post, I added the document, every screenshot, every video, every detail of what she'd done for months and what she'd done years before. We didn't tag her. We didn't need to. Within minutes, the post exploded. People who'd believed her lies were suddenly backpedaling. Women from her church messaged me privately, some apologizing, some horrified, some admitting they'd had a feeling something was wrong but were scared to speak out. But the biggest shock came an hour later. Her pastor commented publicly under Mark's post. "I've received multiple complaints about this behavior. We will be reviewing her involvement in leadership." Leadership? She wasn't just a member. She'd been running one of the accountability circles. People started sharing Mark's post, then the screenshots, then the videos, and finally, the ultrasound I uploaded with shaking hands. The one I'd kept private because it hurt too much to look at. The baby who had been real, ours, loved. No one could spin that. No one tried. By evening, she deleted every social media account she had. By the next morning, she was removed from 2 of her church committees. By the end of the week, she was calling Mark nonstop, from blocked numbers, from friends' phones, begging him to talk, to fix the misunderstanding, to think of family. He didn't answer once. He wrote her a final message. "You lost this relationship the moment you tried to rewrite our lives. Do not contact us again." And then he blocked her for good. The silence afterward felt strange, heavy at first, but then freeing. We grieved together, properly, for the first time without her shadow over everything. We talked about counseling. We talked about the future. We talked about protecting whatever comes next, just the 2 of us. Later that weekend, I deleted the folder of screenshots. Not because I wanted to forget, but because we didn't need them anymore. The truth was already out. And for the first time since the day I miscarried, I breathed without feeling something tighten around my ribs. In the end, it wasn't the revenge that healed us. It was the freedom from her. And the quiet moment, days later, when Mark held my hand and said, "When we try again someday, it'll be on our own terms." I nodded. Because Lynn hadn't destroyed us. She just revealed exactly who she was. And we walked away, finally, fully, from her twisted little world.